and today's subject is titled Competence and Leadership, AL-QIWAMA. What is frequently forgotten in debates about women in Islam is that the Book of Allah does not privilege one sex over the other. Nowhere does it claim superiority over either sex. Numerous verses address both male and female believers as well as male and female Muslims in ungendered way, indicating equal status in the eyes of the Lord and absolute and indiscriminate equality socially and religiously. The following study aims to prove this point against the claims of traditional exegetes, often made solely on the basis of a few isolated verses that women are inferior to men and that women are deficient in reason and religion. They argue that the verses of inheritance and male guardianship support their view that God does indeed differentiate between men and women and that he favors the former over the latter. However, reality has it that the views of medieval scholarship were clouded by an ideology of male dominance and patriarchal hegemony that characterizes their entire exegesis on overshadowed their interpretation of the authoritative text of Islam. Today, in the Islam of the 21st century, such forms of sexism and male chauvinism have no credibility any longer, and it is our aim to show that such male-centered interpretation can be fully contradicted by alternative reading, which argue for equality and end to sex discrimination. Before we analyze the verses of guardianship in detail, we first outline our position on the relationship between men and women. We believe in a relationship of love, kindness, and mutual respect to the effect that men are like a garment, libas, for women, and women are like a garment, libas, for men. The Arabic term we use here, libas, means being intertwined or blended together, referring to a symbiosis between your body and the garment you wear. It is taken from verse 187 of Surah Baqarah. Permitted to you on the night of the fast is the approach to your wives. They are your garments, libasuhunna, and you are their garments, libasuhunna. Libasuhum, libasuhunna. Baqarah 187. A relationship of love, kindness, and mutual respect is a relationship of equality and equivalence, mutakafi. And to show how both partners feel, think, and respond to each other, to talk about women as a kind of commodity for men or less likely about men as a commodity for women is the opposite of what we intend by our concept of equivalence. Let us now turn to the so-called verse of guardianship. Ar-rijal are the qawwamuna of an-nisa because God has given the one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. An-Nisa, chapter Nisa, verse 34. Also, let us listen to the book on the issue of the neglect of responsibility in the shoes on the part of the woman, that is, at times when she upholds the duty of qawama. If you fear a breach between them twain, appoint two arbiters, one from his family and the other from hers. If they wish for peace, God will cause their reconciliation, for God has full knowledge and is acquainted with all things. Nisa 35. Concerning the neglect of responsibility in the shoes on the part of man, that is when he is holding the qawama, the book says, if a woman, imra, fears cruelty or desertion in the shoes on her husband's part, min bi'laha, there is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between them, and such settlement is best even though men's souls are swayed by greed. But if you do good and practice self-restraint, God is acquainted with all that you do. Nisa 128. Verse 34 of Surah Nisa begins with a definition of al-qawama, which means to take care of, to be responsible, or to be in charge. It implies that if you take care of something, you want to improve it. In verse 34, Ar-Rijal takes care of An-Nisa, that is, the former are responsible for the latter. This has often been understood as men take care of women. For some naive people, It even expresses a biological superiority that is forever ingrained in the constitution of the male sex. And since Allah created both sexes in this way, they usually jump to the conclusion that Allah wants women to be essentially deficient in reason and religion, and that He preferred men to women because God has given the one more strength than the other. Chapter 4, verse 34. But if Allah had really wanted to make such an essential sexist claim on the basis of people's gender, why did He not say all males? An example using a different word than ar-rijal. An example, dhukur, or the guardian over all females. An example, again, using a different word, not nisa, but inath. Now, defining the term men, ar-rijal. Conventional wisdom tells us that men are defined by their masculine sexuality. But if masculinity was the only marker of manhood, the two terms male and men would be synonymous, interchangeable, and hence absolutely identical. This, of course, is out of the question since men are not exclusively defined by their sex. The Arabic term man, rajul, has the same root as the noun rijl, which refers to the part of the body which enables people to move or walk or to stand, as in leg. That's what it means. People are called pedestrians if they walk with their legs and feet, arjul, and a woman who walks per pieds is called a woman going on foot, rajula, for female. Many verses in the book use the term rijal in exactly this way to denote movement regardless of the mover's sex. If you fear an enemy, pray on foot, rijalan, or riding. Baqarah 239. If rijal in this context only mean male sex, it would imply that women never go on foot. And proclaim the pilgrimage among men. They will come to you on foot, rijalan. Hajj 27. Again, if rijal meant only male pilgrims, this would not exclude women from making the pilgrimage on foot. Of course, women also perform the pilgrimage on foot. Rijalan in this context implies that those who perform the Hajj have to be strong enough to walk long distances. It addresses the stronger and healthier people among the believers, men and women. By ar-rijal, whom neither traffic nor merchandise can avert from the remembrance of God nor from regular prayer. Verse 37. Can only men in their prayers not be distracted by traffic and trades? Does this mean by logical inference that women are constantly distracted by these things and thus cannot pray properly? Of course not. Rijal in this context again includes both male and female believers. Ar-rijal are the qawamun, a woman, an-nisa. Given the above example of an ungendered usage of rijal, we maintain that the same term used in chapter 4, verse 34, must refer to both sexes. In contrast, other verses of the book do have a gendered meaning. The term rijal refers to male adults, and the term nisa refers to female adults, as we can see in the following three examples. And if there are not two men, then a man, farajulun, and two women, imra'atan. Baqarah 282. Had there not been believing men, rijal, and believing women, nisa, Fath 25. Would you really approach men, rijal, in your lust rather than women, an-nisa? Naml 55. The point we want to make is that the term rajul, rijal, singular, plural, rajul, rijal, singular and plural. Rajul is singular and rijal is plural. Are semantically not exclusively restricted to denote maleness. The generic sense of the term to walk or to go on foot, which is in neither case a prerogative of the male sex. As we have seen in the verses quoted above, the context will tell us whether rajul rijal is used in the generic ungendered sense of walking, going on foot, or whether its derivative gendered sense, male adult, is implied. The fact that in public life in the past, men did all the walking to earn their living for family and wife who stayed at home or did not walk when on travel might explain why the generic sense on foot is almost always associated with the derivative sense men, and yet to claim that this is the only sense of the term would mean, as we have seen, to amputate its meaning by half. Therefore, next will be defining the term woman is next.